Welcome back to The World Over. My next guest has been at the top of the children's bestsellers lists since 2007, when his Diary of a Wimpy Kid series premiered. Now he has an 11th edition, this one called Double Down. He sat down with me recently to discuss the success of his series, the power of great storytelling, and how his Catholic faith plays a crucial role in the stories he tells. Here's my exclusive interview with Jeff Kinney. Jeff, you grew up in Fort Washington, Maryland, right? Very near here. Your father worked at the Pentagon?
I did indeed, yes.
How did all of that shape what would become your life's work, Diary of a Wimpy Kid?
I had a really ordinary childhood, and I think that that was really good for me because ordinary things happen. I didn't have anything extraordinary happen to me. But I think that I had a normal childhood, and that was really good fodder for the type of writing I do. Realistic fiction, writing about situations everyone can relate to.
Now, you started cartooning when? I know in your college newspaper you created a character called Igdoof?
Igdoof, that's how you pronounce it.
Who is Igdoof?
Good job. Igdoof was an awkward freshman. He was this strange-looking character, and he's the character that I wanted to take forward. I wanted to become a syndicated newspaper cartoonist, but I tried it for about 3 years, couldn't break in, and had to find a different way in.
Who were your inspirations?
I think that the cartoonists that most inspired me were Carl Barks, who did the Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge comics from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s.
Beautiful stuff, yeah.
And then Gary Larson, I would say, is a big influence, and maybe even Matt Groening, some of his early books.
Yeah. No, Gary Larson, I see some of that cracked sensibility around the edges in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Cartoon, I have to tell you, comic strips, cartoons rarely make me laugh. Your stuff is actually, I mean, I hear my children belly laughing, and or I'll read it to them, and you know, we're laughing along. They do have that sort of, you take the ordinary, and you sort of turn it on its ear. How aware are you of that? Do you do that in your life?
Well, when I wrote these books, I wrote them for adults. I was really trying to write an opus, sort of a nostalgia piece on childhood. So something along the lines of the comic equivalent of A Christmas Story or The Wonder Years, where it's an adult looking back on a child's life. And so I always had the adult reader in mind, and so I knew I could be arch, and I could have a lot of irony in my books, but then it got turned into a children's series.
Did that change the way you wrote the series from that point on?
It didn't change the way I wrote the series, but it caused me to worry. It caused me to worry that kids wouldn't get the joke, that they wouldn't be in on the joke. And I've found that kids are in on the joke.
Big time.
After they get to a certain age. My then 7-year-old read some of my books and didn't get them. He couldn't figure out why they were supposed to be funny. And then when he turned 8, you know, he read the same stuff, and I quizzed him. I said, "Do you get this? Why is this funny?" And he could explain it to me, but he got really frustrated when he couldn't.
Now, you started writing this series, I mean, doing the Diary of a Wimpy Kid in 1998. But then in May of 2004, you post them online.
That's right.
And they were installments, right?
Right.
So why did you do that?
I started posting them online because our website, the website that we worked for at the time, Funbrain, had a big audience, and there was a need to get people to be reading in the summertime. And so I thought it was a great opportunity for me to start putting together what I had written and start posting it. It just predated blogs, so that was kind of a novel idea at the time, which was posting something new every day and having an eager audience.
What was the genesis of Greg Heffley? And is there any connection between Greg Heffley and Jeff Kinney?
Well, I think you can hear it right in the names. If you put one name on top of the other, right, the meter is there. And that's about as close as Greg gets to me, is that the meter is there, but the specifics aren't. Really? Greg is really an exaggerated version of myself. He's very flawed. He's got my flaws, but they're a little bit amplified. And in some cases, my flaws are deeper than Greg's.
Tell me about Poptropica.
Poptropica.
Where did that come from?
Well, you said it with an accent.
I know.
I'm giving it a
little Latin flair.
Right.
Yeah.
Poptropica was an idea I had when I was mowing my lawn. This idea that you would go on a virtual world, into a virtual world, and go on different islands and have different experiences and quests. Something really unique and unusual, and it's gotten a huge audience, hundreds and hundreds of millions of kids.
No, it's an enormous. I mean, and of course, but there's a tie-in between Greg and the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I mean, he's got his own world and multiple islands, yes?
Right, yeah, you've done your homework.
Well, I don't do my homework. I look over the shoulders of some of your 100 million fans who are going on the site. What do you offer there? Why has that clicked do you think?
Well, Poptropica really is a direct descendant of the Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck books that I read as a kid, where Carl Barks, this cartoonist, introduced me to my world. My whole basis of understanding of the world started with those comics. Religion, psychology, psychiatry, you know, geology, history, everything came from those comics to start with. And I knew that we had this privilege, the privilege and the responsibility to communicate a kid's world back to them. And they were reading about, they were experiencing things like Greek mythology for the first time.
Right.
We had the chance to do that. So that's why it's been very edifying and rewarding.
No, it's a lot of fun for kids. Tell me about, you say you didn't start out to help kids or teach kids to read, you sought out to entertain them.
Yeah, and I still have that as my charge. I'm not trying to moralize to kids. I don't want my books to be amoral, but usually when an adult is writing for kids, they think, well, if I'm writing for kids, I must impart some sort of lesson that's a very grown-up sort of lesson, because that's your charge.
Right.
And for me, I think my charge is to put humor as a priority. And if you moralize to kids, especially writing for this age group, they can sniff it out, and they will, and then they'll be turned off to it.
So run away from you.
Yeah, I like the message that reading is fun. That's a good enough message for me.
That's enough for you. How do you start? When you start a new book, where do you begin? Do you isolate a moment in your life or in the lives of your children? Where does the germ originate?
I start with jokes. I know from experience I need 350 jokes to create one book. So I spend a lot of time just walking and experiencing life in different ways to try to get my brain working. I know the ideas are in there. I just have to figure out how to get them out. And this year I had a really unique experience. I knew I needed to get away to write, and I didn't know where I was going to go. So I literally went to the airport packed for a warmer climate. It was in the middle of the winter. And so I was packed for Florida. I live in Massachusetts. And then I changed my mind at the last second. I got the last ticket to Iceland. And so I showed up in Iceland without a winter coat, you know, with shorts and flip-flops. And I did my best writing there.
Really?
And I think I have to trick my brain that way. If my brain is comfortable, my brain is sort of like a kid with oppositional defiance disorder.
Yeah, it only works if it's got something that contradicts it.
Yes, exactly. So I have to sort of trick myself.
And how long were you in Iceland?
I was in Iceland for 5 days, and it was the best writing I did this year.
And you wrote the whole book? You didn't write the whole book then.
No,
you
but
kind of framed it up.
Yeah, I generated probably 70 out of the 350 ideas, which is significant.
Wow. Now this is a book, we should say. It pioneered, I would say, the hybrid of comics as well as text. And it creates a very non-threatening, when a child sees a page like this, they're not threatened by it. That's and right. In fact, and then they're hooked, and you see them. They just start flipping. My children burn through these in a day or less, which, you know, I'm sure you hear this everywhere you go. And everywhere I travel as a children's author, somebody's got a copy of Diary of a Wimpy Kid or two on them, or they're trading them like baseball cards. Right. That's got to make you feel good.
It does. It's a huge surprise to me. But I think what makes these books work, you hit it on the head, is that when a kid opens a book, they see it doesn't look like work. Maybe it's fun. And that those drawings that they give the kid these little islands to swim to. You know, you have the text, which is the work, and then you get the reward. And I think that's very effective. It's a good way to motivate kids to read.
But you stumbled into it. That wasn't the initial idea.
It definitely wasn't. You know, that's been a discovery after the fact.
Now, these books have been translated into Latin and hundreds of other languages, but Latin. Presented to the Pope.
Yes.
As a Catholic, that's got to make you feel pretty good.
It was pretty cool. You know, my Italian publisher was really excited when they came up with this idea of translating the book into Latin. And I was like, it sounds fun. You know, I'm not sure who will read it. And then one day they sent me a picture of the book being handed to the Pope, the first copy.
Wow.
So that really was cool. Yeah.
Is any of your faith in the books? Do you weave your faith in? Does it color the edges of the book or the character?
I think that Greg's family, I would say that they're Catholic. I try to keep it generic in a way, so that it's accessible to everyone. But I would say, the family is a church-going family, and I'm really trying to reflect my own experience, and that was my experience then, and it is now. You have a bookstore now. Yes. Which I want to talk about in a moment, but on the third floor of that bookstore is a studio. That's right.
How often do you work there every day?
I work there every day from about January until May, and then I go into seclusion until all the way until December, and then I'll return back to the bookstore.
Now, I want you to back up. What do you do when you're there on the third floor? Are you working on your books there, or are you working the bookstore?
I work on, I answer emails and work with my bookstore staff and my own smaller staff there. But when I need to write and really write, I need to be by myself.
You're secluded?
Yes.
And where do you go for that?
I have a very strange situation. We have a normal size house, sort of a modest size house, and next to it is a slightly smaller house. I work there, and it's a studio space. You know, I've had my 2 employees work there, and then we have guests stay there. So it's really well used.
Wow.
But the really strange thing is that we had the house next to that, a neighbor's house, last summer was hit by a small plane.
Oh my gosh.
In our neighborhood, and so the people who lived inside of that house were all safe, and they moved out into my studio house. So I lost the studio house for about a year, and I've just gotten it back now.
Now it's back. But that's where you do the writing, the majority of the writing and the sketching for this.
Yes,
books.
That's correct.
Wow. 180 million copies in print, 50 languages. Did you ever think this series would do what it's done and reach the people, the children it has?
You know, I never thought that I'd get the book published, on the one hand. On the other hand, you know, Greg starts off this book saying, you know, one day when I'm rich and famous, you know, I won't have to answer these stupid questions. And I think that there is that very American feeling, well, one day when I'm president, you know. And so what I found when I go out into the world is that other publisher or media types, interviewers say, now why would Greg say one day when I'm rich and famous? And it's really, I've really realized that is a very American kind of attitude, and that's surprised me. I thought every kid thought, well, one day I'll be the leader, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think they all do. You have special insight to kids too. I think you're on their wavelength, because there are things here that frankly a lot of adults have lost touch with, that you are obviously very clued into. And I see the reaction among children. They recognize it. What do you see when you look at these books? When you see them on the shelf and you see kids reading them, and what are they seeing?
That's a good question. What I see is a book that I might have liked to have encountered, because it's going to give me perspective on my own life. It might have helped me through some bad situations, and it might have taught me to laugh at myself. And I think you know, humor is tragedy plus time, and these embarrassing things and these awful things happen to all of us, but I've packaged it in a way that I think is accessible for kids.
So it takes you about half a year to write one of these books.
That's right.
Do you ever get the feeling, here's the Conan Doyle question, is there any moment where you say, you know what, I'm going to push Greg off of Reichenbach Falls. I'm not doing another. This is it. He's going to go off to college, and I'm closing the door.
Yeah. I've thought about that, but I have come to the conclusion, in fact, this book is called Double Down, because that's my state of mind. What I've realized is that Greg is rooted more in comics than he is in literature. And cartoon characters have an undetermined lifespan. You know, Charles Schultz's creations lasted for 50 years. And sometimes cartoons die too soon. Calvin and Hobbes did. The Far Side did. And when a comic goes away, it leaves a hole in people's lives. So I think you can't take that decision too lightly.
I want to ask you some questions I ask every author that comes in the Story-Entered segment. What is your favorite children's book?
My favorite children's book, I'm going to go with Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume.
Oh, sure.
Peter Hatcher is this really relatable character, and something awful happens with the turtle.
What's your least favorite book?
My least favorite book, I would say my least favorite book is anything that has a heavy-handed message.
The story or the book that touched Jeff Kinney's life in a way that changed it?
That would be,
Reorient.
I would say the book, there's a book called Inside the Box, and it's about innovation. It's a grown-up book, and it teaches you techniques for innovating, and it's really shined a light on how Diary of a Wimpy Kid, why Diary of a Wimpy Kid worked for me, and it's helped me make decisions going forward.
And why does it work for you?
Well, one of the key tools is called subtraction, and it's the idea of taking a product, taking a thing, and then subtracting what seems to be the most important or nearly the most important element and seeing what you have left. And for me, that was taking this dream of becoming a newspaper cartoonist and subtracting the newspaper. And I became a cartoonist because I was able to subtract the newspaper from the vision.
Wow. And you infected a whole generation or two now with your vision. That was, you didn't need the newspaper.
Right.
Where do your best ideas come from? And where do you go looking for them?
My best ideas come from real life. If something's rooted in reality, then it's going to be much better than something that comes from my imagination.
If you could pick a mentor, dead or alive, a writing mentor, who would it be?
Well, the person that I fully don't understand but recognize as a genius is Bob Dylan. I really enjoy his work. I think he is fully deserving of the
Nobel laureate?
I do, yeah. I really do. I think he's a genius. But I truly don't understand what makes him work.
Yeah, well, because he just follows his own, it seems he just follows his own gut no matter where he goes, and it's just such a startling vision. Everybody gets caught up in it.
Yes.
Not unlike a Wimpy Kid.
Quite unlike it.
Well, you may get the Nobel Prize yet. You've got time. Look, they never thought lyrics would. What about cartoons?
Right.
What advice would you give to parents who are desperately trying to get the kids to read, and they won't do it?
Yeah, well, I'm a bookseller now, and I would hand them one of my books, or I'd hand them a similar book. I think it's too big of a jump to go from picture books to chapter books with no illustrations. I think there needs to be something in between that gets kids motivated. And when a kid finishes a book, it's a feeling of success. They have a feeling of success. It's very addictive.
Yeah, and that's what the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books really give them. That they get that sense of confidence, the speed. My children first read your books and then found their way to chapter books and other things that were much more dense and complicated. But you're right, it was not the content, but the experience that gave them that. But you know what? They keep coming back.
That's good.
That's what I find.
It's bathroom reading.
Well, people want to laugh, and children especially want to laugh.
Yeah.
Life is so heavy on them. I really do think they need that. They need to be reminded life can be funny.
I agree.
And I love that you have a family, an intact family also, that sort of goes on the journey with this boy, which was a big inspiration, I have to tell you, in my own writing, but we'll talk about that another time. Are you an architect or a gardener? George Martin said there are two approaches to writers. They're either architects or gardeners.
I'm an architect, but I'm terrible at maintenance. I need to build and move on.
So you keep moving.
Yes.
What's next for Greg?
Book 12, I have an idea already. It's going to be a holiday movie, and we're working on a new movie based on The Long Haul right now. Wow. Also a musical and an animated TV special, so lots.
Wow, incredible. Jeff Kinney, thank you. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Double Down, the 11th in the series by Jeff Kinney, is available in bookstores everywhere and online.